A quiet town, a family brutally murdered in their sleep. Over a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. Who was the shadowy figure that crept into the Moore home that night? And why did they unleash such horror? Dive into the chilling tale of the Villisca Axe Murders on this episode of Tales from the Underworld. The bloodstains told a story too horrific to comprehend. The Moore family and the 𝖘𝖊𝖉𝖎 sisters had been brutally slaughtered as they slept, leaving the quiet town of Villisca in shock and terror. But this gruesome discovery was only the beginning of a mystery that would baffle investigators and terrify a community for generations. This is the chilling tale of the Villisca Axe Murders. On the night of June 9, 1912, the quiet town of Villisca, Iowa, became the scene of a horrific crime that would haunt the nation for over a century. The Moore family home, once full of life, fell prey to one of America's most brutal unsolved crimes, the Villisca Axe Murders. 8 people, including 6 children, were viciously slaughtered, and to this day, no one has ever been brought to justice. Who was the shadowy figure that snuck into the house that night? And why did they unleash such unspeakable violence? As we dive deeper, the mystery only grows more disturbing. It was a warm June night. The Moore family had just returned home from a Children's Day event at the local Presbyterian church. Along with Josiah and Sarah's 4 children, Herman, Mary, Arthur and Paul, were 2 young guests, the 𝖘𝖊𝖉𝖎𝖆 sisters, Ina and Lena, invited for a sleepover. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the town of Villisca was quiet, but in the Moore family home, something sinister was already in motion. Somewhere in the shadows, a killer was waiting. But how could someone murder an entire family without anyone hearing a thing? This is just one of the many disturbing questions surrounding this case. The next morning, Mary Peckham, a concerned neighbour, noticed something strange. The usually lively Moore household was eerily silent. No one came outside to do the morning chores, and Mary's knocks went unanswered. When Josiah's brother Ross arrived, he opened the front door with a spur key, and what he found inside was the stuff of nightmares. Blood covered the walls and ceilings. Ina and Lena 𝖘𝖊𝖉𝖎𝖆's bodies were discovered first, but as Officer Henry Horton arrived and continued the search, the full horror was revealed. Josiah, Sarah, and all 4 of their children had been brutally slaughtered. What could possibly drive someone to such violence? And why did the killer leave strange objects, like a slab of bacon wrapped in a towel, on the floor next to the bodies? The brutality was staggering. Josiah Moore was struck more than 30 times, so violently that the ceiling bore marks from the axe. His face was so mutilated, his eyes were said to be missing. But why? Why such savagery? And why would the killer go to the trouble of covering the victims' faces with clothes and bedding, or draping every mirror in the house? It almost seems as though the killer didn't want to face what they had done, or was there something more sinister behind these strange rituals? As the investigation unfolded, the town was gripped by fear and rumours. Was the killer still among them? Over the years, many suspects emerged, but none were ever convicted. One of the most shocking suspects was the Reverend George Kelly, a preacher with a troubled past. He even confessed to the murders, but then recanted. Could it be that Kelly was merely seeking attention, or was his confession true? But that's not the only theory that will leave you questioning everything. There was Andrew Sawyer, a drifter with a strange obsession with the murders, or Frank Jones, Josiah's business rival, who allegedly held a deep grudge against him. Could one of these men have held enough hatred to orchestrate such a brutal crime? Then, there's an even darker theory, one that stretches beyond Villisca. In 2017, researchers Bill and Rachel James pointed to Paul Mueller, a serial killer they believe was responsible for the spree of axe murders across the country. Mueller had a pattern, choosing homes near train tracks and attacking families in their sleep. Could the Villisca Axe Murders have been part of a far larger killing spree? And if so, why did Mueller, or whoever the killer was, vanish without a trace? The Villisca Axe Murders left a permanent scar on the town of Villisca, and over 100 years later, we are no closer to knowing who committed this brutal crime. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, despite the wild confessions and suspects, the case remains unsolved. But one question haunts the story of the Villisca Axe Murders. Was this the work of a deranged individual seeking revenge, or a cold-blooded killer driven by a need to take lives? Whoever the killer was, the crime on that night in 1912 ensured that the Moore family and the 𝖘𝖊𝖉𝖎𝖆 sisters would be forever remembered, not for the lives that they lived, but for the violence that took them.
Thanks for listening to Tales from the Underworld. If you're fascinated by the stories we uncover, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. For even more exclusive content, head over to our website at talesfromtheunderworld.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get insider access to deeper case details, early updates on new episodes, and more true crime content sent straight to your inbox. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay out of the shadows.